Greetings, fellow programmers. This is Pavel, and this is a C++ exercise 515 from the book Starting Out with C++ from Control Structures to Objects. Now in this one we will be creating a program that displays a weekly payroll report. A loop in the program should ask the user for the employee number, gross pay, state tax, federal tax, and FICA withholding. Like, if you're not from the US and don't know what it means, it's just simply for all purposes in this program, it's a withholding. In other words, it's a deduction from the gross pay, like a tax. The loop will terminate when 0 is entered for the employee number. After the data is entered, the program should display totals for gross pay, state tax, federal tax, FICA withholding, and net pay. There's a validation, which is important in this case. Do not accept negative numbers for any of the items entered. Do not accept values for state, federal, or FICA that are greater than the gross pay. And if the sum of state and tax if the sum of state tax plus FICA for an employee is greater than gross pay, you'll print an error message and ask the user to re-enter the data for the employee. So all these conditions have to be checked before we kind of accept the input. Alright, so yeah, let's get to code. A C++ program. I already have the IO stream library, so because we'll be using input and output and using namespace, the standard namespace. Alright, so what do we need first? Well, we need an employee number as a variable, because remember, when the employee number is 0, that's when we will stop entering any more employees. So I will do an integer employee number, and I'll set this one to 1. Normally I would do 0, but again, 0 is the terminating number. When the employee number is 0, then again we will exit the loop. We will do double gross pay total, and it will just equal to 0 or 0.0 since it's double state tax total. The same thing, double federal tax total equals 0.0, and finally double the FICA total, and that's 0.0 as well. Now these are the running totals that we will use. These are not for individual employee, this is for all employees together. Now we are not calculating the taxes, we are simply entering them. We're not calculating, like, let's say 6% or anything like that. We will simply enter a number and deduct it from the gross pay total. So as the instruction says, there will be a loop that will exit when 0 is entered for the employee number. So we will simply do while our employee number is not equal to 0. This is our main loop. We will simply keep entering more employees. So these are the like I said, these are the running totals. Now I'll declare variables for each individual employee. So double employee gross pay, and it's the same thing like it was before. These are going to be the variables that will collect the individual employees kind of data. So the taxes, the state taxes, the federal taxes, and it will also get the double employee. So these are the individual records for each employee. Now remember the validation, like we need to make sure that no number is less than 0. We don't accept negative numbers. Now your first instinct might be simply do something like this. If the employee, let's say gross pay, is less than 0, then we will output something like a cout wrong input or something like that. Now I'm gonna leave it here just to demonstrate why this is not the best way to do this. So okay, we have our variables, we have our checked, so now we of course need to collect the data itself. So we'll do cout, we will do please enter employee gross pay, and we will do the cin for the employee gross pay, of course. So that's one data, one record, and the other ones will be, you know what, I'm gonna just copy paste them because they're gonna be similar. So cout and cin for all the others. So this is the gross pay, so this one will be the state taxes. So employee state taxes. Now we will do federal taxes, so employee federal taxes here. Federal taxes, and finally the FICA employee. So this is all our data the user enters, and now we will check. This is just an example. Let's say we will just check the employee gross pay to make sure that it's not less than 0, that it's not negative. So we will do cout wrong input, and of course we will ask the user to enter a new one. So we will employee gross pay, we will collect the new correct input. So if I run it now, let me build it. And if I run it, it asks for the please enter employee gross pay. So let's say I enter a negative number, so it asks for the rest, comes to the end, and it says, oh, wrong input because I entered a negative number here. So it asks for basically asking for the new input. But if I enter the same thing or another negative number, it goes and it asks for the next employee. In other words, the second time I enter a wrong input, it accepts it, and that's why the single if statements like this are not the best solution to collecting the or error checking the input, because once the user enters a wrong input and we ask for a new input, if the user enters wrong input again, then we just keep going. That's why we need to actually put this in a loop to make sure that the user keeps entering input until it is a valid input. So simple solution is to create another variable, a boolean. I'll just call it error, and this one will basically be true or false depending on whether there was an error or not. And I'll put everything into a do loop. All this input and the error check-in, I'll just put into a do loop, and we will be looping while the error is true. So as long as there's an error, error will be true. It won't let us leave the loop, and we'll be asking again and again for the input. So all I have to do here is go to the if statement, ask for the inform the user of the wrong input, and instead of collecting the new input here, I will simply go and do error equals true. But if this is correct, if the employee gross pay is a positive number as expected, then we will do error equals false. So if I run it now, it's building, compiling, there you go. So if I run it now and I enter -2 and enter the rest, it says wrong input, please enter employee gross pay. If I enter it again, wrong, it asks for the rest, but it doesn't let me go any further. It doesn't let me finish inputting the data for this employee until I enter actually positive number. So now it goes to the next employee. So we will do all this error checking within our do while loop in the same manner as we did this one, except the error checking needs to be for all the numbers that are entered. They all have to be positive, so not just employee gross pay. So if employee gross pay is negative, or if the employee FICA is less than 0, or the employee federal taxes are less than 0, or the employee state taxes are less than 0, then we will see out something like you cannot enter negative numbers, please re-enter, and on a new line, just for the formatting purposes. So that's one of the conditions, the negative numbers. Or the second condition we have to validate is to make sure that neither of those the taxes and the FICA are greater than the gross pay. So that's gonna be our else if. So else if we will now check whether any of them is greater than gross pay. So we will do employee FICA is greater than employee gross pay, or the employee federal taxes is greater than employee gross pay, or the employee state taxes are greater than gross pay. If any of this is true, then we will do the same thing. We will do cout over here. We will do taxes, well, something like that. Taxes cannot be greater than gross pay. There you go. Please re-enter, and error is true. And finally, there's one more condition. If the sum of state tax plus FICA is greater than gross pay, then print the error message. So we will. That was gonna be our last else if. Else if the employee FICA plus the employee state taxes, if that's greater than employee gross pay, then again we'll display the message and set the error to true. We will simply say that the FICA plus state taxes cannot be greater than gross pay. Please re-enter. Now if any of this is true, the flag is set to the error flag is set to true, so it will come over here, and since we are looping while the error is true, then it simply will repeat all of this entering data for the same employee. Remember, this is one employee loop. This is all the employees loop, and this one is only for one employee, including the variables here. Now if none of them is wrong, if all the data is entered correctly, then the error is set to false, so it comes to while loop, error is false, so it exits this do while loop and comes back here and simply continues for the next employee. And so over here, when it comes here and exits the loop, we have the correct data, so now we can add those data to the to our running total. So we will do a gross pay total plus equals employee gross pay. We will do a state tax total plus equals employee state taxes. Federal tax total, we will add the employee federal taxes to it, and finally our FICO total, we will add the employee FICO. Remember, this is only going to happen after the input is correct. If the input is incorrect, we are remaining in this do while loop, and after it is correct, if everything checks out, then we will add these values and go to the while employee number is not equal to 0 loop. And when we enter that, when we enter 0 as the employee number, then we will exit all our editing or entering data, so we can come over here at the end of after the while loop. We'll come over here and simply display the data at the end after everything is being entered, after all the data for all employees is being entered. So we will do gross pay total is, and we can do the gross pay total, and on the new line we will do the state tax, I forgot, state tax total is not a number but a $, and it's gonna be the state tax total, and the same for the federal tax and FICO. And FICO now. So and that should be a running program. There's still a problem which I will show you now, but this should actually run. So let me run it first. So this is our employee gross pay. Let's say I enter 100. Employee state taxes, I'll do 50. Employee federal taxes, I do 50. And I'll enter FICO as 60. So that, remember, the state taxes plus FICO, if it's greater than gross pay, we should get an error. So let me see if that's gonna work. And it says FICO plus state taxes cannot be greater than 0. Please re-enter. So I do 50, I mean 150, 50, and I'll do 10. So it goes, if everything's correct, goes to the next employee. Let's say I'll do -2. I'll do taxes 100. It doesn't matter because it will already catch the negative number here. and here it is, you cannot enter negative numbers, so it's asking for the same employee. So this one will have $200, and let's say 50, 50, and 50, and it's asking for the next one, and I enter 0, and what's gonna happen is it will still ask me for this employee's data. And I cannot enter even 0, so I have to enter actually some kind of data to exit from the loop. Even though I entered a 0 as the employee number, it still keep looping. That's because if you realize what's going on here, while the employee number is 0, I'll come over here and it's asking me, you know, to enter the employee gross pay. Actually, I forgot to ask for the employee number, of course. So that's the actual problem here. But in our while loop, before the do loop, okay, in our while loop, the first thing I'm going to do is do the cout, please enter employee number, because without it you can keep entering zeros for all the other, and it won't obviously exit. So in, we will do the employee number. Now this will work, but still there's a little problem with it. It will catch it, and we will be now able to exit the loop. Let me do the first employee numbers like that, and now I enter 0 for the employee number, and it's still asking me for the gross pay, and then it exits. In other words, I have to go through all these data entry, even though I'm wishing to actually exit. I mean, the calculation is okay, it displays what needs to be displayed, but once I enter 0, I do not want to go into entering any more data. So after I enter the employee number, I'll check it. I'll check if it's a 0. So if employee number doesn't equal 0, then we will do all of these that I just and if it is, then we won't do that at all. We will simply skip that. I think I didn't copy it right way. If the employee is let me do it again. So if employee number is not 0, then I forgot this. Like that. Then we will do the entering data. Then we will do the data entry. If it is 0, if it comes over here and it says employee number is 0, then it will skip it all the way here and simply goes and output the display and undisplay the output. So let me run that again one more time. So please enter employee number 1, gross pay is 100, state taxes I'll do 50, and this one I'll do 20 and 10. Employee number 2 I'll do 200 for the gross pay, and 50 and 20 and 10. And if I enter 0, it exits directly, and it says gross pay is 300, which it is, 100 plus 200. State tax total is 100, 50 plus 50. Federal 20 plus 20, which is 40, and FICA is 10 plus 10, which is 20. So this is the final solution that checks that for all the conditions and doesn't let the user enter any wrong data. In other words, it will be looping until user enters correct data. It exits properly because we are checking for the not only in the while loop until the user is 0. We also check in each employee number entry right away, and only if it is not 0, only then we will perform all the calculations and that data entry. And when it is 0, when we exit the loop, then we will simply display the totals that we calculate over here after each individual do while loop, and each one do while loop is actually this one, I'm sorry, this one actually is supposed to be after the while loop, because if it's within the while loop, well, then it will be entering the data even when it's wrong. So it must be after the do while loop is entered. So now before we go, let me just show you why I moved this block of code, running totals, to the bottom after the while do while loop after we enter the data. Let me put it back over here and I'll show you what it does. Now we will still do the error check-in, but what it's going to do, it's going to add the data to our running totals even if the data is wrong. Even if there is an error, it will check it, it will set the error flag to true, then it will comes over here and it will add all those bad data to our running totals, and then we will repeat it again for the same employee. So if I'll build it, let me just run it, so in case you have any doubts what it does. If I run it and it asks for the employee data, number is 1. Let's say I enter 100, 50, 40, and 10. So this one's correct. Now in this one, let's say I enter negative 100 for the employee number 2. I'm sorry, that's employee number 2, and I enter gross pay as negative 100, and the same taxes as the one before. So it will come over here and it will tell me it cannot accept negative numbers, please re-enter. So now I'll enter positive 100 and 50, 40, and 10, and I'll enter 0 to exit. And look at what we get. Our gross total for both those employees is only 100. That's because we entered 100, then we entered negative 100, in other words it became 0, and then we entered the correct value of 100 again, so it became 0 plus 100, which is 100. In other words, it will it did the error check-in, but it still entered the wrong data into our running totals. That's why we need to move this, all our running totals, after we exit inputting the data for each individual employees, because that's when we know that the data is actually correct and only correct data was captured. Alright, so I hope that this makes it clear. So if you like the video, please leave a like, share with your friends, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.